Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the beautiful Paige Troxell. Paige, how you doing today?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh no, this is such an honor for me. We finally got to meet in person a couple weeks ago in Cincinnati, and I'm super happy to make this happen. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are a Washington, D.C. based filmmaker, social media content creator, and lifelong Nightmare on Elm Street fan. In 2016, you directed the popular fan film Don't Fall Asleep, the untold Nancy Thompson story, which was the first fan film to ever feature an original cast member. So we got to talk about that a little bit. Who
Of
was the original
course.
cast member, and how did that come to be?
So the original cast member was Heather Langenkamp, Nancy Thompson herself. Um, so I in 2015 there was that huge horror hound convention where it was the largest like Nightmare on Elm Street reunion where they had like everybody from every franchise. And my friend Nathan Thomas Milliner, he was premiering his film The Confession of Fred Krueger
Okay.
there, and I don't know like what I was thinking. Like I didn't know like fan films really existed. Like I didn't know that it was like a thing that people could really do. I knew he was premiering a film, but I guess it just didn't click. And so when we sat down in the theater and we watched it, I was like blown away at like the quality and the story. And I was like, here's my friend. He's just like, he's a graphics artist. Like, he's worked with like NECA and all these like great companies. I was like, he's an artist, but like he decided to just make a film and he did it and the audience loves it. And I was like, I want to do that too. Like I've always wanted to tell a story. I've always wanted to make a film. And so I looked at my friends. I looked at Deandra and Anthony and my friend Michelle, and I was like, we need to tell Nancy's story. Like we're the little B Nancy club, or the little Langan Campions, and
Right.
I was like, it just makes sense for us to tell the story, and they were on board. And so we started writing a script. Like we wrote like a treatment, and we through the years had created a really great friendship with Heather Langenkamp, and she like ever since she premiered I Am Nancy, her documentary, like we started like traveling to conventions with her sometimes, and it was really fun. It was a really great time at that time. And so we were like, wouldn't it be great if she was a part of it? Like how could we get her to be a part of it? And we asked her, we said, if we were ever to like do a fan film of like Nancy's story, would you be willing? And she's like, I'll do anything you guys want. So we
That's awesome.
decided the best, easiest thing to do is just have her narrate it. So we had Heather Langenkamp narrate it as Nancy from Beyond the Grave. And so
That's so sick.
it's horrible quality. It's like 7 or 8 years old. It's like it's before we knew what we were doing, but like it's such a little gem for me because I felt like I got to make a film with my hero, about my
Right.
hero. So I love it. I love that people like it. I love that I love that we were the first.
Well, and you guys don't have to go far to see it because I do have the links down in the description as well as Paige's social media links. So you can follow her and become a part of that family as well. But it wasn't just that. You were the second unit DP on Angela, the Sleepaway Camp documentary. And in
Yeah.
2023, the FredHead, the documentary, which was number one for 5 weeks on Amazon. We all love FredHeads. Um,
Yeah.
so, expanding a little bit, not just Nancy, but also, the whole FredHeads documentary, as well as the Sleepaway Camp documentary. So, what was it like being a part
Yeah.
of those?
So the Sleepaway Camp documentary, my friend Mike Perez, he is the one who produces a lot of the talking head documentaries. So like the Pennywise documentary, the Robert England Icon documentary, the No Brains, Scream, Never Sleep Again. Like he's the talking head guy is what I call it. And he hit us up and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Atlanta and we're filming for this documentary and if you guys could come in, we'd love to like hire you." And so we were like, oh, we like jumped at it. So my producing partner, Kim Gunzinger, we were like, all right, let's go to Atlanta and film Sleepaway Camp. And I had never seen Sleepaway Camp before. And so I had no clue what it was about. So she made me watch it. And I was like, oh, this is what it's about. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
cool. And I loved it like instantly because I was like, oh, I love this movie. Like it's like I love it. And so we didn't. It was fun, but I had no clue the people who I was interviewing. And like they'd sit down and Kim knew every single one of them. So she'd be like, "This one's Jill Sholin, and she was this person." And I was like, okay. So like and we're
Right.
there, and they're all and I'm behind the camera and we're like running sound and stuff, but I had no clue who they were. And so I thought it was really cool. It was really fun. And then Fred Heads started with a conversation. I had just seen another documentary that was based on fandom in a totally different genre. And I was like, why do we not have our story? Like, why do we not have the community and the conventions? And we hear all the time how this franchise has like impacted people and saved their lives. And,
Hmm.
you know, we should show the world this little gift that we have. And so that's what happened. So we started production and went rolling and then premiered. And when we premiered, we launched pre-orders with our distribution company. And it was very exciting to see that first day. Like we were going back and forth between David Bowie's documentary and our documentary and like all day. And I was like, I'll be number two to David Bowie all day,
Yeah.
like all
Yeah.
day long. But then when we hit number one, we were like, oh, we made it number one on our first day. And
Yeah.
then every day for 5 weeks, it was number one. And we were like, holy crap. So it was fun.
I'm
It was
so
a
proud of you
wild
guys because
ride.
FredHeads is so amazing, and to
Thank
see all these
you.
amazing people that I look up to and I consider friends now, and going back and revisiting it, it's such an amazing accomplishment that you guys did, and
Thank you.
it really is an honor to work with you now. And this may not come as a surprise to a lot of you, but this is the perfect segue. So, in order to be a part of FredHeads, in order to don't fall asleep, horror had to start from you somewhere. So now,
Hmm.
Paige, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what it was that got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Paige, the first horror movie you watched was,
Dream Warriors and Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I was 5 years
again,
old.
not much of a shock here that we're starting off in the world of Nightmare on Elm Street. So, this is a movie that many people in the horror community consider to be the cream of the crop, the
Yeah.
best in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So, we know you were very young, 5 years old when you had seen it for the first time, but do you remember who you were with when you watched it for the first time?
Yeah. So the joke is that my parents were teen parents, and I always say they were teen parents before like the MTV thing made it like a reality show.
Hmm.
And so they had to work like weird long hours all the time, and they were exhausted. And my mom was at work, and my dad, I was just a very energetic kid. My dad was just like exhausted. And so he's like, I'm gonna sit on the couch and I'm gonna watch a movie. And he like just sat me on the floor, like and hunked me down. He goes, you're not moving, you're gonna watch the movie. And he fell asleep and it rolled into another movie. And the other movie was Dream Warriors. And he was passed out. And I
Hmm.
was like, my eyes were bug-eyed, and I was like, I fell in love with it right away. I really liked the fact that there were these kids who were like this little band of misfits who nobody like kind of believed at 5 years old. Like I grasped onto, here are these kids here, they're just trying to fight to survive, and then in walks Nancy and believes them. And so when I was so little, I was like, that's such a powerful image to me. And so I was obsessed right away with it. And then I watched it like every single day. My grandma recorded it on a VHS tape for me. And I remember it was Apocalypse Now was the movie before it. And so I
Hmm.
would always have to forward it. I've never seen Apocalypse Now, and I still to this day, because of this scene, I'd have to forward it to like the cow scene where they're like cutting off the head, and I'd have to sit
Yeah,
there and wait. And like as soon as it would done, then it would pop into the music of Dream Warriors. And so that scene, I because of that, I've never seen Apocalypse Now, like
that's
ever.
hilarious.
Oh,
You kind of touched on it there a little bit because Nightmare on Elm Street 3, it is one of these movies that has transcended generations, and a
yeah.
lot of people still to this day are just so in love and infatuated with this film, whether it be the soundtrack or um, the kids involved. This is one of the first slashers I can remember where you're genuinely rooting for every single kid. You don't really
Right.
have the meat bags in this movie where you're just like, ah, whatever happens to them, happens to them. You're genuinely caring about every single one of these characters. So, which scene was it that affected you the most from this film?
You know, when I was a little kid, like I connected with all the like the younger kids in it. But as I got older, the scene that like continuously like affected me, I dealt with like a lot of bullying and stuff, and we talk about it in FredHeads a little bit. But the scene that really resonated with me was when Kristen in the beginning is like saying the rhyme and she's crying and she doesn't want to be put to sleep. And, she had already told her mom, like, Mom, I keep having these dreams. And the mom's telling her, like, your therapist says this and you're crazy. Just go to sleep. You just need this. And then she gets brought into the doctors. And it's like nobody around her believes her. And then in walks Nancy and like finishes the rhyme for her and like
Mhm.
essentially not without saying it says, I see you and I'm going to fix this for you.
Yeah.
And so being like, 9, 10, 11, getting like terribly bullied, like seeing that, like feeling like nobody was in your corner, seeing that somebody like that could be in your corner is always the scene that like stuck out to me. And I
Mhm.
always said my whole life that if I ever get in a position where I'm able to be that for somebody or do that for somebody, I'm going to be like Nancy. I'm going to be like where she's the one who says, I see you. And so that's what I've tried to live my whole life by is I see you. I'm aware of you. I recognize that you're there and you're not going to go through this alone. And
And
I've learned it
that's
from
such
her.
an important message, whether, you're 10, 5, or, 25, 35, 45, to know that you're
Right.
not alone. There's somebody there that has your back. That's an ageless support system. So to continue to have that is such an amazing thing. And especially in the horror community, a lot of us are outcast in
Right.
the real world. So to be able to have this community where we're all here and we all have each other's backs, we all understand each other and we all love each other and we're there to talk to each other. It's such an important way to be in a community like this. So
Right.
it's amazing to know that started off with Nancy, and then you
Yeah.
get to the chance to work with her. Like
Right.
that's the way things go full circle like that. So
Yeah.
we know which scene affected you the most, but what would you say your favorite scene from the Dream Warriors is?
Oh, I okay. My favorite scene, such a small scene, and it's not even, I don't even know how to describe it. It's such a small scene. It's not even a big scene. And it's a scene that I used to get in trouble for all the time because I would reenact it as a kid. It's that scene where, and I can word it word for word, where Kristen, it cuts into her and she's yelling at Sims and she's like, ah! And she throws the glass at her and she goes, You stupid bitch, you're killing us. You're killing. And as she's like screaming down the hall, and she's like, You're a sick girl, Kristen. And like that whole scene I love because it shows that like Kristen wasn't taking it laying down. Like she
Right.
was like, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. And I love that's my favorite scene in the whole movie. I don't know why.
No, and it's one of those ones as kids, that we gravitate to, we stick with because of how much it meant to us as kids. So the
Yeah.
nostalgia of it alone keeps it
Yeah.
alive with us. And we talked a little bit earlier about how there's really no meat bags in this movie, but that doesn't mean there's not a good amount of kills. And every kill in this movie is extremely memorable, extremely
Yeah.
tragic. But what kill would you say was the one that stuck with you the most?
You know, I think the one that stuck with me the most, I'm always so poetic about Dream Warriors. I always look for a deeper meaning in this film. So that's why I joke that FredHeads is the way that it is, because it's like I'm always looking for the deeper meaning. But I think the death that stuck out to me most was Taryn's. And I think because it shows how cruel of a person Freddie really is and really can be. Because Freddie, what he does to in the dream, it happens in the real world. And so Taryn's story is so sad and so dark, and she's trying to prove that she's in recovery and she's trying to prove that she's not a junkie. And we
Mhm.
see that with the orderly who like exposes her arms and he's like, no one's gonna believe a junkie like you. And then in the end, how Freddie kills her, it looks like she overdosed. And so
Which is awful.
yes, and so like the sadness factor is that people are gonna think she died as the junkie overdose and it's everything she didn't want. And Freddie gets pure pleasure from that. And so it just shows how evil of a character he is. And so it's one of the most like memorable deaths in the entire franchise for me. And Jennifer Rubin, we have a lot of footage with Jennifer Rubin, and she has talked about this like with us about how fans come up to her and have said how important her character is to
Mhm.
them, and how, you know, the reflection of it, of what they've seen through her. And she said that so many people have come to her and said that they've gotten clean from drugs and alcohol through watching her character, and the lesson that they have learned. Like, so to me, that scene is just so powerful. And so that kill is just, I would say it's probably my favorite kill because of
Yeah.
the meaning behind it.
And I completely understand that, and because I agree with you. You know, it's like anybody that's been in any type of recovery, that scene is extremely uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
You know, you've done everything you can to beat this demon, and then it's forced back onto you. Like
Right.
it's such a terrible, terrible scene to watch, and it's so hard. You know, as a 38-year-old man that's gone through these type of things, to sit there and watch somebody go through like even fictionalized. It's a
Yeah.
very hard thing to watch somebody have to go through. So, Nightmare on Elm Street is a franchise,
Mhm.
obviously, and you know Freddy has been haunting our dreams ever since we were young. But
Right.
since it is a franchise, I always ask, Nightmare 3 was your first, but which one is your favorite in the franchise?
Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So I say 1 through 6 is the canon series. And so
Mhm.
for me, Dream Warriors is my favorite in that. But as a whole, as all of the Freddy films, it's Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yeah. And it was
It's just
amazing to see all the people that came back for that
mhm,
movie. You know, like the funeral scene, to see everybody there. And I'm such a big fan of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Wes Craven's New Nightmare walked so Scream could run.
right. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I love New Nightmare. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's super underrated. I'm glad that it's finally getting the flowers and the cult following it deserves.
Yeah.
Um, but I've often said there's no Nightmare on Elm Street movie with a good ending.
No.
Um, I always feel like they wrote the first 2 and 3/4 acts, then they got to the endings and they were always like, fuck it,
Crash
just do
Land.
this. Um, but you know, like in that movie, like, oh, it's not Freddy, it's a sleep demon. Let's burn it to death. I'm like, what?
Right.
Um, but you know, these movies are all so important to all of us, and Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, is one of the best horror franchises. It's in my top five. You take out the Dream Child, it might be my number one. I'm just definitely not a fan of that one, but it did get the remake treatment back in 2010. Now I know
Mhm.
you're a big Robert Englund person, but did you see the remake? And if so, what are your thoughts on that?
There's a remake? There's
See, and it's funny
um
because like for the longest time, I couldn't stand the remake, and I
yeah.
was always like, you know, I don't like it because of Freddie and blah 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 blah. But you know, Jackie Earle Haley, in my opinion, plays Freddy Krueger better than Robert Englund. Give me a second, hear me out. Um,
I've heard this from so many people. No judgment on my end whatsoever.
yeah,
No.
it's just like obviously Robert Englund is Freddy,
Right.
but he has so much charisma you can't dislike him. But Jackie Earle Haley plays that child molester, child killer.
Hmm.
I hate this guy. I despise him, which we're supposed to. You know,
Right.
we're not supposed to like Freddy, but Robert is just so charismatic and amazing that we can't help but love him.
Right.
You know, he's just so good. Jackie Earle Haley was like, yeah, hold my beer. Trust me,
Yeah.
you're gonna hate me.
Well, Jackie Earle
Um,
Haley is Jackie Earle Haley. Like, and
right.
so is Robert. Robert's an amazing actor too. Like, if you've seen him in the last season of Stranger Things, I feel like that really showed off like
Yeah.
who he is as an actor. That's like not Freddy Krueger, because it's like he
Hmm.
is so much more than Freddy Krueger. It's just that's who
Right.
he's most famous for. But my issues with the remake were not so much Jackie Earle Haley. I don't think his performance was like amazing or super stellar by any means, but I think a lot of that for me has to do with the CGI look of him. I think that I couldn't see past that for his performance because it just felt like I was listening to his voice on headphones and it didn't match what was coming on screen. I was not a fan of it at all. It was filmed not far where I'm originally from, where I grew up. And I just remember like I was like, okay, they're gonna do this. I'm gonna at least go and try to see it. Cause like who knows, maybe Robert's cameoing in it, maybe Heather's cameoing in it. And I saw it and during the theater, I just felt like it was a complete like rip off of the entire franchise. There was like no originality. Didn't even come off as like a homage. Like there was just blatant like rip-offs of it. and the overuse of CGI really bummed me out. And so
Mhm.
I didn't watch it for years. I refused to watch it. I was calling it garbage, whatever. And then my friend Deandra and I, we used to have a podcast called Elm Street Radio. And during Elm Street Radio, we got asked our opinion on it. And she didn't like it either, but she decided to rewatch it and then learned that like she actually did like it on the rewatch. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. I'm like, I'll rewatch it for the first time after I think it was like 10 years after it had come out or something. And so I rewatched it and I rewatched it with like fresh eyes and really was like the same issues that were there were the issues that I didn't
Right.
like. But there were things that I did like in it. And I through a more maturity lens, I felt like I wanted to at least take something positive out of it. So like I loved the micro naps thing. I think that was wicked cool. And I loved how the scene flipped between the grocery store and the hellscape or boiler room, whatever it was. And then I liked the snowing scene. I don't know why, but that just felt very eerie to me. But the
Mhm.
issue that I felt was you jump right into their trauma. Like you don't learn to love these kids or fall in love with them in the way that you do with the original Nightmare. Original Nightmare is very dated. It's like it's very much a factor of the 80s and the wholesomeness and all that stuff. But you love those characters
Right.
because that's who they are. They're wholesome and they're sweet and you see their friendship. You this one you just jump right into their trauma. And it's like hard to connect with them because then you're kind of like rooting for the fun, crazy kill. And then when you look at the back plot of what it's really about, and then I didn't like the fact that they have you questioning if he's innocent or not. Like,
Right.
I don't ever want to question if Freddy is innocent. Like, I don't ever want to root for him. Like, that was my issue with part six. Like, that, like, when they go back in time and they're seeing him being bullied, like, by the end of it, you're like, heck yeah, I'd be killing these kids too. Like, you want to, like, root for him, and it's like, you don't ever want to root for the most vile, evil human being. And this
Right.
movie kind of makes you start to question that. And so it just wasn't for me, but we we don't mention it at all in our documentary. And I had a really fun idea. And then we decided we didn't want to like upset the community and make anyone mad, but we were going to have somebody say, "What were your thoughts about the remake?" at the end. And then it just cut to a fuzzy screen.
Yeah.
Everything's like VHS for us. And so I was like, I can't insult the community and do that. But if we do a Blu-ray release, I've said I was like, that's what I want to do because we have footage of somebody saying that, and so I was like, I'm like, that's what I want
Oh,
to do.
that would be dope. I don't think anybody would be upset. I think people would laugh about it,
It's just
honestly.
funny,
Right. It's supposed to be funny.
yeah.
Um, so we know that your horror journey started off with the Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. But now, here for a second, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Paige? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Outside of A Nightmare on Elm Street, because I feel like that's very on a pedestal for me, and nothing can ever touch that. All I do is talk about Nightmare, so I always drop down a tier from there. But other than that, it's Scream. Scream is what made me want to be in this industry. I saw it at 12 years old and saw Wes directed by Wes Craven at the end, and it hit me. I was like, oh my God, this is a job.
Mhm.
Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I started writing little scripts after that, like my own little knockoff, like Beware is what it was called.
That's awesome.
And so I love the Scream franchise. It is like that is the most cohesive franchise out of all of them. And out of all of them. And it is I just love it. I love Sydney Prescott. Gail Weathers is my favorite character in horror. Like I love it. Are you a
Mhm.
Scream fan?
I'm a huge Scream fan.
Yeah.
Huge Scream fan.
Yeah.
And I've always said, like, whether you love it or you hate it, you can't deny the impact that it had on the genre.
Right.
You look at the movies that came out, late 93, 94, 95, and then the movies that came out 97, 98, 99. The impact that Scream had in, putting a shot in the arm to the horror genre and just bringing it back.
Yeah.
It's impressive, that Wes was able to duplicate what he did with A Nightmare on Elm Street with Scream, and
Yeah.
thank God that Wes Craven's New Nightmare bombed, because
Mhm.
if it didn't, we might not have gotten Scream. He might have
We would have
continued
never
the
gotten it.
meta world with Nightmare on Elm Street. So everything happens for a reason because now people know how amazing Wes Craven's New Nightmare is.
Yeah.
So it all worked out for the best in the end.
Yeah.
Um, So I do want to thank you again for coming on here, Paige, and hanging out with me for a little while, talking about your first
Yeah.
horror movie and your favorite horror movie. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're
Yeah.
going to go back to Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and I think I know the answer, but I got to ask anyway. My script is telling me to. What we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, Paige, we're not ranking this movie on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking Nightmare on Elm Street 3 on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Paige, what would your ranking of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 be?
I mean, it's gonna be 5. Like, if it's gonna be anything, it's gonna be 5. It's affected my whole life.
I had a strong feeling that's
Yeah.
the direction we were heading in, but like I said, I still had to ask.
You see, if I
Um,
said 4.5, you'd
yeah,
be
I would have
like,
been like bullshit,
right.
bullshit. Cut. Go back. Take that again.
Right.
So I do want to thank you. I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I have all of Paige's social media links down in the description. So make sure you're following her on social media and becoming a part of her family. She's going to have an amazing podcast coming up with our friend Deandra here in the very, very
I
near
can't
future. So
wait.
you're going to want to be, oh, trust me, I'm over the moon excited for it. So I can't wait for you guys to check that out. Paige, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions
Yeah,
for
no, you're
you.
good.
Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are down in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.